Hello, welcome. I'm joined here with Mike. I'm Alex. Thank you so much for the presentation you just did. We've just come off of a data community meetup with Mike that was fantastic. I learned a lot from it. I'm really excited to get into some more detail on it around the peculiar state of AI. So yeah,
Hey.
thank you, Mike.
No, not a problem at all. Thank you, Alex. It's a genuine delight to be given like an hour and a remit to just be like, hey, could you just give us an hour on the state of the industry and what it means to incorporate artificial intelligence as a data professional now and how we actually deal with that. And it's been really quite an enlightening experience, which I have really appreciated, even writing in the run up, which gave me the moment to kind of think through some of the thoughts that have been rattling around for a while and codify them and actually put them down into a presentation. And I found even that process was really valuable to me. So again, thank you for having me on.
No problem at all. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay. So yeah, I've got a few questions. Things that you mentioned really interesting to go into more detail on. So I think it's almost a meme at this point. AI is the forefront of everyone's social media feeds, the news. You know, it's even in politics now, as you mentioned. It's 100%. Kind of everywhere. It's the hot topic. And I think there's a lot of companies going, oh, we want to do AI, not really fully understanding what that even means. Mm-hmm. And therefore, not every company is kind of far enough along in what I call their data journey, data maturity. And they aren't really, they're kind of not exactly destined for failure, but they're gonna come across some pitfalls, right? So what would you say are the common pitfalls that you see companies jump into AI initiatives with, and what should they be doing instead, do you think, to get started?
Well, okay, so there's a really big one that I actually didn't talk about in the presentation at all. So, and I appreciate this time to kind of like get into it a little bit more, because in the artificial intelligence as a process has two parts to it. And we only talked about one of them in the presentation because it was an audience of data folk. We only talked about how do you get insight from artificial intelligence and how do you use large language models and AI models to like present the evidence to your business users to make them help them make better decisions. But there's a whole other half to this, which is like productivity gains. So when companies go on an artificial intelligence rollout, one of the first pitfalls I see is that they confuse or conflate the two. So they're like, we are going to go out and get Copilot for everybody, and that's going to do all kinds of things. And they don't think through the fact that they've actually got two separate problems that they're trying to solve. On the one hand, you're trying to make people's day-to-day better. You're trying to make your employees more effective at their actual jobs. You're trying to make their hours count for more by giving them effectively an assistant. So you've got Copilot in your email, you've got Copilot in your Teams, you've got engineers now who are augmented with Claude Code and Codex. And that's like one half of the coin, right? That's one thing going on over here. And then you've got this whole other thing going on over here, which is how can we help our data function and our data professionals generate better and more interesting evidence for our business decisions using a large language model, using artificial intelligence? How can we have background processes or insights that are augmented by generative AI in order to be able to make more money, make better business decisions? And one of the first brick walls that businesses walk into is that they conflate these two things. They think that, well, actually, I don't think they think at all. They're a business and they don't understand. So they don't understand that when you get a Copilot license, I know that brings like Copilot Studio with it, but they concentrate too much on one of those areas without really understanding what it means to live in both spaces. And frequently, because it's the area that businesses like interact with it and people interact with on a day-to-day basis, you do a Copilot rollout or you do a rollout of like Claude Cowork or something like that. And you get people really playing in the space of like email reading and Teams reading and calendar management. And then also there's this weird team of yahoos over here who are also building agents out of the same tool. But apparently everyone has to go to the same steering meetings and go to the same governance committees and go to the same, steering groups that somehow govern all of this and report back and make presentations about how my world has been changed because I've implemented AI in my process or whatever. And we're all grouped into the same bucket. Whereas I think it's significantly more helpful to separate the two concerns. I think it's significantly more helpful, even if you're doing one rollout. So this happens all the time with Copilot. Even if you are doing one Copilot rollout, you should, as a business, think about the fact that you've got two things going on. You've got everybody's day-to-day getting better because their Excel munging and their document reading and their email triaging is getting quicker. And then you've got insights and data and agent building over here. And those two things should not be, they should hold hands, but they are actually two different things. You are, on the one hand, effectively buying fancier and more interesting office furniture, and on the other hand, doing a data transformation. And so you need to separate the two kind of like things out and understand that the two things that you've got going on there have two different sets of criteria to make them successful. That's the very first thing that most businesses kind of like accidentally get wrong. They don't think it through and they don't understand that we've actually got two things going on here in one AI transformation. If you are going down the road of AI transformation, I'm firmly of the opinion that there are two ways to do it. There is a small way that gets you, and this is not new, right? Like this is how businesses do change management. Okay. You can do small things and grow and understand them well and grow out, or you can take a massive breath in and be like, right, let's go. Let's do the whole onion. Let's eat everything. And they're two different things. And you need to mindfully choose which one you're going to do, because it's far easier, I think, and by far the most successful implementations I have seen have been ones where you take a process that you understand intimately, you build it on top of data you know very well, and then you take AI and wrap it around it and use it as just another tool to push out into your business so that your end users know what it is that they're doing. The more adventurous and wilder firms at the moment are taking a breathe in and stepping back and saying words like ontology and going, okay, what if we rethought what it means to be a business in 2026? What if we mapped our entire enterprise and then let agents run over that enterprise and take actions autonomously inside our business to be able to augment our workforce? I've got clients who are thinking that way. This is not theoretical. I've got clients who are thinking that way, but you need to be extremely aware that that's a really big deal. And that's a very binary choice that you're getting into. Yes. And so it's a big old change. It's a huge change to do that and to rethink what it means to be a business. And it can be done, but it's hard. It's really hard. And you may just not be a business that can do that. Like I also work in some, very large and complex regulated industries, and they can't change. They just can't change. Like structurally, this is how they are. And this is just how they're always going to be, because this is just the nature of the beast, right? You can't change how you are if the physical world won't change around you. So you almost are limited to that kind of like mapping exercise that you can then kind of like grow your AI function out. And when you are doing something like this and growing it out, what you're really trying to do is do the work of more people without adding people to your team. So you're a team of 7 and you're already doing the work of 9, but you know that in 2 years' time, you're going to have to do the work of 15. Well, holy moly, the budget isn't going to come in to get any more people. So what are we going to do about it? That AI augmentation from the ground up is probably the right way to start going about that, and to take the odd half hour out of your life and to minimize the number of hours that you spend doing like dirty work is the best way to go about it. If you are a startup, or if you're a very flexible company, or if you're looking to like explosively grow, then maybe you could think about doing this big top-down transformation, but those are more rare.
Yeah, so it's automating the mundane and the kind of the boilerplate, like you say, is kind of one part of it. But then doing new things and new products and accelerators is the other part of it at the same time. And those two things have to be thought about and governed very differently. As you mentioned in your presentation, you got the people, process, technology elements to think about. All of it, the change happens everywhere. And like you say, certain sectors are going to be harder to change or nigh on impossible. Government sector, for example, they've got a lot of governance and security and all kinds of things to think about. Yeah, so yeah, fair enough. Okay, thank you. That's really interesting. So this is something. So my next question is, I'm testing is one of my biggest things that I'm interested in. I swear by it's incredibly important for us as data engineers, of course. And you touched on it briefly. My thinking around this is testing AI. It must be quite difficult because it's naturally non-deterministic, right? So how do you actually make testing repeatable when the output isn't guaranteed to be the same? I would say, is it mostly down to careful prompt engineering to make sure you get more consistent output, or is there more to it, memory and more guardrails, things like that?
So, yeah, basically. So we'll separate out like testing frameworks from strategies for repeatability. So the large language model testing frameworks have come along a long way in the last sort of 18 months. They've come along, and so tools like deep eval are they're reasonably mature now, and so can be like reliably used. But you still sometimes find yourself in a situation where you really need to build your own testing harness. We're still in a place where sometimes, so in the wilder and in the more bespoke, agentic, multi-hop, autonomous applications that I develop, I still find myself being like, I'm just going to build my own testing harness here. Okay. That's fine. I'll just it's okay. I'll just build my own testing harness. It's fine. Like, it doesn't matter. And frequently, actually, what I find is that, even, and I appreciate this is a dirty word, but even vibe coding up just a really quick HTML dashboard on top of the testing runs can really place a lot of confidence in your end users that you're doing the right thing. And so I love being able to just basically give them a dashboard and go, look, I've just whipped this up. We've done overnight. We ran 50 different tests, 5 different times, and here are the results. And then you've got this little dashboard here that you can kind of like hand out and be like, look, these are the results. This is what's going on. The way that you do that is dependent on what it is that you're actually looking for. So like lots of different, and this is the reason that sometimes I get into the world of bespoke testing harnesses, is that the success criteria of the different questions and the success criteria of different users is sometimes really quite different. Like, I have a project on the go exactly right now where word count is really important to them. It's really, really important that the answers that they get out adhere to an exact word count. And I have had all of the conversations that go, look, it's a large language model. It can't count. It doesn't know. This is that whole beans of like 18 months ago when we asked GPT-4, like, how many R's are there in strawberry, right? It doesn't know. That's not what it's for. And so it can't count. Like, what are we going to do? And so we've had to put a lot of work into a strategy for like, this answer needs to adhere to a specific word count. And one of the criteria in testing is, does it adhere to the word count? Is it not over whatever it is? I think it's 160 words or whatever it happens to be, right? And that is a pass-fail criteria on top of that. We've had lots and lots of different success criteria from different clients, and they can be quite wild sometimes, like the word count one. In terms of how do you get good results, it really is all about, for me, it's all about grounding. So it's all about making sure that you are grounding your large language model. And grounding is a word I've nicked from Microsoft, but that's fine. You are grounding your large language model's responses in actual data, in actual evidence, and that you're making sure that as often as possible, your large language model is touching actual data to make its decisions. So you don't have, if you have like a lang graph framework or you have a lang chain, like, sequence of events, you don't have too many hops from one step to the next where you just like kind of let it ideate and kind of let it wander off and do stuff. You have a lot of times where the large language model is coming back and grounding its answer in something that actually exists. And by keeping that grounding and keeping that evidence base going, you get more consistency. One of the big problems that we have is that, like, by the very nature of it being deterministic, obviously old testing frameworks don't work, right? Like obviously, like things like PyTest don't work anymore because you are in a world where the answer can be semantically similar or semantically the same, but it's structured differently or it's worded differently. So if you ask the same question 3 times, you do get a different answer, but the answer is semantically the same, but it's actually different wording. And that makes it quite difficult to test for. And I had a long night of consideration as to whether I would allow large language models to judge the answers given out by large language models. I'm currently on the side of yes, you should. You should allow a large, in your testing harness, you should have a large language model judging, like if you have the same question asked 3 different times, you should have a harness around it that goes, are these 3 things semantically the same and why? And reduce that to one output that's like, these 3 are semantically the same. They both reference £14,000 or whatever the answer actually is. And if you know the answer, that's even better. So one of the things that I almost demand out of my clients when we start down the road of AI applications we know we're going to productionize is a sample set. Like what does good look like to you out of this? What are the queries that you want answering? Do we have known answers at this time that we can test against? Because those are the projects that succeed. Though when you have a clear endpoint that's not just like, hey man, get in and let's just get some insight. When you actually have like a known way that you want to augment this process, when you go, hey, Jessica spends 400 hours every month, whatever, 400 hours a month getting out the answer 14 from these 900 spreadsheets. Can you reduce that number, that 400, by any number of hours at any point in the step? But we know the answer is 14, so we can get in and we can actually augment that in a meaningful way. Those are the best projects, and they really speak to, again, how you tie that back into your testing harness. And again, that testing harness has to be over large language models that are grounded in actual data that lives in your systems.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So, I mean, it sounds like you're saying basically reducing as much as possible its opportunity to hallucinate things, reducing the hops.
Absolutely.
I mean, it sounds like, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, like, to take a concrete example, one of the agents I've built over the last 12 months, without getting too specific, is really bothered about time, right? Like, it's really interested, and the end users are really interested in temporal questions. Like, in the last 2 months, what? In 2023, what? Why? How? And we actually got to the point where we wrote a procedural, like a step that procedurally extracted time from the questions and created a state in the LangGraph flow that was like, this is the time grounding that you have. But that extraction eventually, and it was a bugger to code. It was awful, but it's this ridiculous piece of code that, like, procedurally takes time out of the question. And it's known, like, part of the training for the tool is it knows about time if you ask for it in these ways. If you don't ask for it in these ways, I can't guarantee that it'll know about time in the way that you really want it to. It'll have a crack, but your organization is sufficiently complicated that this is how you need to talk about time in talking to the agent in this way. And that was fine, but it was an example of something where we had to take the judgment of a large language model away from itself and go, we're just going to cover this procedurally. We're not going to let you hallucinate, because it would go mad, right? It would just like wander off and get the time wrong, because the time and the way that time is talked about in that organization is sufficiently complicated that it just didn't get it.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And it sounds like the mechanism is slightly different when it comes to AI, but it's the same as testing's been for decades, is make sure you've got some expectation that you're testing against, and you're able to verify that by whatever means.
Yeah, this is nothing new, right? Like this is nothing new. This is just good engineering principles. What does good look like? Right, let's go over there.
Yeah, exactly, precisely. Yes. Excellent. Okay. I mean, so we've kind of touched on this actually in the first 2 questions, but one of the questions that was asked at the Q&A was the person asked about how for years we've been building all these pipelines, making sure the architecture is well designed, making sure the quality is good, having all this testing, all these processes in place. And he was saying, AI is replacing this, and I think you would agree, and the conclusion I came to as well is that AI doesn't remove the need for any of this good practice. It raises the stakes. It makes it more important than ever, right? But do you think there's any kind of good practice from before AI became more prominent that's kind of especially more important now than it was before?
100%, right? Like if we just talk to data quality, right, we could pick at this in lots and lots of different ways. But even if we just talk to data quality is more important than it has ever been, because AI can consume data at a rate that no other tool we've ever had can consume it as quickly as artificial intelligence can. And it can then spew out an answer unbelievably quickly and unbelievably confidently. And this has really shone a light on top of data quality, because one of the lovely things that artificial intelligence has kind of done is cracked open data that's not like previously been accessible. There are lots and lots of data sets hanging around in organizations in the United Kingdom and indeed like globally that people just haven't had time to access. There are SQL warehouses just kind of like dormant all over the place that people haven't had time to plug into, like data pipelines. People haven't had the time to get hold of these things and put them on dashboards, or like previously we've been able to do this and this and this. Now, code is so cheap, and I say this as somebody who makes their living writing it. Code is so cheap that we can get access to these things on an ad hoc basis quite quickly. And so you can really shine a light on your data landscape quite quickly in a way that previously we've not really been able to. A really good example of this is like Databricks Genie. So if you've been involved in an organization that rolls out Databricks Genie, this allows you to take your Databricks landscape, your Unity catalog, and expose it to a large language model. And the large language model is given the power, should you have the right permissions, to kind of like just wander over your Unity catalog, just look at different bits of it and kind of present it back to the user. And this removes the user from the rigidity of the dashboard. The previously we were like, oh, these are the graphs you get. This is development time. Now we can take those unstructured queries of our end users and allow them to wander over the Unity catalog with Databricks Genie. And that exposes all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Like people are immediately like, well, hang on a minute. What's this? What's going on over here? Why is this table called gold with a little g and that table's called gold with a big G? And why have we got underscores over here? We got and this, like, why is, and Databricks Genie will be very like brutally honest with them. They'll be like, yeah, so we've got a currency column here and I'm going to have to convert it because it's all a string. And so suddenly people are getting access, like people call it democratization. I think it's just absolute anarchy at times, that people are getting access to these data sets and becoming intimately acquainted with data sets in a way that they never imagined they would be. And the artificial intelligence tells them things about their data that they never imagined were possible. And so they have huge numbers of questions off the back of this. Like, why is this? What's going on here? Why is that? And so it really exposes the need for good practice. And it really exposes the need for rigor, because like, I have had situations where people have exposed something using artificial intelligence and then made a decision off the back of it, which has turned out to be, not necessarily the right one to have taken, because the data in the database said one thing and the artificial intelligence went, it says this one thing over here. Okay, there you go. This, and it turns out that's not true, and that was a data quality issue, and a decision was taken. And we're very happy, right? Like we caught the decision halfway, it's all good, and it wasn't a very consequential decision anyway. But like what it does is it exposes your data to your end users faster than they've ever been able to before, and distills it into something that even non-technical users can kind of understand. And data quality is something you can wrap your head around very, very easily, right? Like it takes me ages to explain to people who've never heard of a star schema, like how a star schema works and the difference between a dimension and a fact and what a slowly changing dimension is. And type two, like, it just takes a million billion years, right? And people fundamentally don't care. Like end users are like, cool. Well, okay, I don't mind. Whatever.
Can you do it?
Yeah, like, come on, get on with it. But this column is all 10 too big, is very easy for everybody to understand. All of these names are spelt wrong, or this number is actually a string, so you can't add it together because it's actually formatted as the string 2, not the number 2. Or that's very easy for everyone to get their head around. And so you can immediately like start to get feedback tickets that are like, hey, this is wrong for X, Y, and Z reasons, and I understand it really well, and I want it fixed now. And so this is good. Like, I love people engaging with the data. Feedback is nearly always wanted. Nearly always I'm after feedback as to how the data products are going, right? Like, some opinions can be wrong, but like nearly always I'm interested in what people think about it. But it really kind of exposes the fact that people are carrying around all this data and all of this content, and the AI augmented processes are allowing people to kind of like stick their faces into it in a way that they've never really been able to before. You can even see this with the rise of as terminal agents get better and better and better. I'm constantly blown away by like what my Codex and Claude Code can kind of do just off the fly. Like they just seem to be getting better and better and better. Yeah, it's really cool. And I really value having them as a way, as a companion to work, because they help me leverage my expertise in a way I've never really been able to leverage it before. They're like, as a force multiplier, they're amazing. That expertise has to be there. That's a conversation for another time. But like, as a force multiplier, they're absolutely astonishing. But the things that they can start to do in terms of, you know, constructing their own SQL queries and running them, or getting their head into the Databricks CLI so that they can, you know, make queries on the Unity catalog from the Databricks CLI, or spin up jobs, or query. Like, I was doing something recently where I had it using querying Synapse workspaces in Azure, and it could, you know, running notebooks from the command line and getting the results back piped into the standard out, and then analyzing the results, and really, really good force multipliers. And as those get cleverer and cleverer and integrated more and more into everybody's day-to-day workflow, we're going to see people getting their head intimately into the data landscape more than they ever have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as a result, demanding more from people like us who are going to be implementing it, right?
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it creates more questions. And like you say, surfaces some of these issues. And I think that's going to be, I think for a lot of organizations, depending on how mature they are, they're going to realize, yeah, that's okay. And some of them are gonna be panicking, right? So, yeah,
it should be viewed as okay, right? Like, everybody should be I think it listen, this is great. All we're trying to fundamentally do is make good decisions off the back of evidence, right? That's what we're trying to do. It's better that we know.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what data is all about. It's about having the right processes in place to get out the information rather than just data. And learning more about the reality of the data that we have rather than not. Actually, this leads perfectly, what you're talking about, people having more questions, this leads perfectly into what I was going to ask next, which is, do you think as a result of all this, we've finally cracked true self-service BI, or do you think there's still gaps?
So
big question.
Yeah, no. And this is, I have to be careful answering this one, because I don't wish so. True self-service BI really works when people know what they want. When people understand fully what it is that they need in order to be able to make good decisions. And I genuinely think that is deeply and well understood when you've spent time understanding the like inflection points of your job and the decision points that you have, and what it is that takes you from one decision boundary to another. I'm very happy on this podcast to sit here and wave a slightly controversial flag, which is that I actually think that most data programs, or many data programs, let's go with many data programs aren't actually data programs. They are vibes programs with numbers. And that even if you have perfect information about something, people haven't set out their decision boundary ahead of time. So like, if you are trying to make a decision and you have some quantity that helps you make that decision, people haven't in general ahead of time gone, well, if it's below X, we're going to do this thing. And if it's above X, we're going to do this other thing. People haven't done that.
I get the answer like, now what?
Yeah, exactly. People just look at a graph and go, ooh, that's bad. And so what are we going to do about it? You know, like people don't, when everybody gathers around a Power BI dashboard and sees numbers going down or numbers going up, the first question that people don't have is, well, is this statistically significant? Is this something we should actually worry about? Or are we actually seeing random variation? People don't ask that. People just look at it and go, oh, it's going down. We should do something about that. Or, oh, it's going up. We should do something about that. We don't have evidence-based programs in general. What we have is props to vibes-based decision-making. And so as BI and self-service BI comes out, I still think that there is true value in helping people deeply understand what levers they can pull in order to be able to make better business decisions. And this is where my counterparts in the non-technical arm of consulting really come to the fore. This is where things like data strategy come in. This is where things like data governance come in. This is where things like business, like our BAs who do an amazing job of mapping out process and deeply understanding what it is that moves a business from one state to the next and helping people understand what they can do in order to be able to like augment that or maybe slow it down or whatever it is that makes their job tick. Deeply helping people understand what it is that they do on a day-to-day basis and how it is that evidence can augment the decisions that they make. Self-service BI is amazing because everyone can know lots of things all at once. It's also kind of terrible because everyone can know lots of things all at once. And so you have to kind of like understand what it is that actually moves the needle in your job and what it is that moves the needle in the decisions that you make in order to be able to do that. So it's great. It's brilliant. But what it means is that you need to help people more deeply understand what they do. I talk all the time about raising the cognitive floor in organizations. If you're going to roll out true self-service BI, let's pretend it's happened, right? Like everyone can ask any question arbitrarily about any business. Let's pretend it's happened. What you need to do is you need to put in programs that help you raise the cognitive floor of your business and help people understand what it is that their job now is. If like gathering insight is just a commodity, then your job is like really crunchy decision making. So let's help you make those decisions better. Let's really help you understand how the processes in your business work for you to be able to make optimal decisions based on this magic information that you have.
I guess kind of what we've said throughout this is AI gives people the ability to do more faster, gives them more of the things they were able to do before. If that's bad data quality, then more bad output. If, you know, for example, we've got to decide what's the remit, what's the goal, and not just put more information in front of people making decisions, because that's just going to overwhelm them. They're still human, right? If we're giving 1,000 times more output because we've got an AI to a humans isn't magically able to process more of that. We still need to very carefully curate what they get in front of them, right?
Yeah. It's like you can wind up with information overload if you're not careful, and that's obviously a bad thing, right? Like that's clearly a bad thing, and so you have to put a lot of effort to make sure that you only have the critical amounts and you have the right information at the right time to be able to make the right decisions.
Precisely. Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you. So, last question then. I think one of the points you made during one of the Q&A at the end of the main session was it's a very obvious statement, but it's important to say, is that you can't point AI at a data that doesn't exist, right? So there's still a problem of having to ingest the data. It's a pain point I hear a lot as well. You know, sometimes it can take a week, 2 weeks, longer. Sometimes it can take a day if it's just a CSV file. It really depends on the complexity of it. There's, you know, unstructured data and so on. We're seeing a lot of consolidation, I think, in that area. So, you know, Fivetran's recent merger with DBT, they're kind of bringing the ingestion together with the transformation a lot more closely. Do you think the tooling closing the gap, or do you think ingestion is going to remain a problem for a while?
I think that, I mean, whoever cracks it is going to make $1 billion, aren't they?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like, whoever gets this right is going to make a load of money. But I think fundamentally we have a governance problem. Like that's fundamentally what we have. So even if we have a magic pipeline, right? If we separate out the technical from the non-technical, let's pretend we have a magic pipeline that you can take arbitrary data and shove it down and get nice tables out the bottom, right? Like let's pretend that's true. Even if that is true, yeah. Even if that is true, you still fundamentally have a governance problem of people going, well, do you have the right authorization to be able to do this? And do you have the right authenticate? And so we see a world where, as technical development gets quicker and cheaper, your job as a data engineer gets more blended and gets more interesting and gets more like less insular, because your job is a little bit to kind of like help the users, and especially in the world of consultancy that we're both kind of in, your job is to help the end users and the data functions that you augment to understand how it is in their organization that data does get ingested. And this is still going to be a bottleneck, because fundamentally at the end of the day, you are still relying on human decision making. You're still relying on going to people and going, right, look, here are the terms of service. Here's what we've got. Here's why I'm allowed to put our Salesforce data into our Databricks. That's why I'm allowed to do it. Like fundamentally, that's still a decision that you have to take to some kind of like governance review board or architectural review, or like there's going to be some organization within the big and complex company that you are working for that has to give you the nod to be able to move the data from one place to another. Something that even internally in Oakland, we deal with all of the time. Like, can we move this data from here to here? And we're in the EU, right? And those servers are okay. And so this is not solved, right? Like, even if the technical side is, which it isn't, but even if the technical side is solved, this is still something you're gonna have to work on, and really starts to speak to the blended role that data professionals are starting to be able to take on. That as your job gets like augmented, again, that cognitive floor gets raised. You're actually involved in the crunchier decisions of, should you be allowed to move this from here to here? And if you do that, then what business decisions are you making over here? And can you justify the storage cost of copying it from this ERP here into the blob storage and the Delta tables here? And what are we actually going to augment with that, and why? And so you're actually making more interesting, crunchier decisions from a business perspective. You may be, your listeners of this podcast, at least some of them will be like, I don't want to do this. That sucks, man. I want to just write code and do interesting, like, code things. And that's cool and true. And then, and if that's true,
this slows it down.
Yeah. If that's true, then there's the whole technical bucket to get into, right? That thing we assumed was just true, not true, right? Like, let's take the opposite view. Let's assume for a second that governance processes are solved and that you're just allowed to put any data anywhere, and that's fine. And the reason that we can think that is that there are some companies for whom that is like true, like Uber. I'm not world's biggest fan of Uber as a company, but they have kind of solved the governance problem by doing everything beforehand and just having data contracts, right? Like, everything's kind of thought of up front. And if you want to move data around, it's basically governed by code. And if you can't do it, there are microservices that stop you doing it. You know, like, if you're not allowed to take this data and put it in that region, in that blob, in that AWS S3 bucket, then there are microservices that stop you. Okay. That's just kind of like the governance problem is very much solved to allow developers to move at speed. A lot of work has to go into that. A lot of work up front has to go into that. But there is evidence to assume that, like, hey, let's pretend that the governance problem is solved for a second. And if we do that, we got a whole technical beans to sort of deal with over here, which is, again, a whole lot of fun and games, right? That, like, Fivetran are really pushing on this, as you kind of said, that we should be able to take arbitrary pieces of data and push them into data pipelines and just get lovely tables out of the bottom. This speaks to why data engineering is not going away. Like, the whole, that just doesn't exist. So the core fundamentals of engineering, structuring, testing, building are not going away anytime soon. Just like, you know, it's a bit hip and cool at the moment to kind of like wander away from the medallion architecture and be like, ooh, well, actually, we've got a raw layer and a normalized layer and a conformed layer and a presentation layer and whatever, man. Hang around for a bit. Medallion architecture will come back. It'll be fine. And so, you know, it just, the artificial intelligence can sit between those and make the transition between them faster. But again, it's just another tool, but more so. And so that's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, no, I think this speaks to a kind of a theme of this whole the podcast we're doing, the presentations, AI is enabling everyone to do more, but it's moving the problem from can we to should we.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
I think that's, I appreciate that summarizing a lot, but that's what I'm getting from what you're saying.
Yeah. The surface of decision that you can make is now so big. Like you can wake up in the morning and be like, I just want to let look, I've got $5,000 of API credits in my pocket, and I really fancy just taking Claude Mythos and building a data platform. Go. There's my AZ key. There's $5,000 worth of API credit. Off you pop. It'd be Claude Fable, actually, wouldn't it? Because of the consumer grade. You could do that. Like, it's not a problem. That is something you could do. You can wake up and
come back.
Absolutely, right? That is, in a sense, like solved. That's possible. You can do that. Should you do that is a really good question. And that, again, I sound like a stuck record, but I found a good phrase and I'm keeping with it. It raises the cognitive floor of your job. Just because you now can build data platforms for like no reason, should you? Probably not.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park.
Yes, indeed. Look, you can spend thousands of dollars on Claude Fable. Should you? Probably not.
Precisely. I think that is a fantastic note to end on. So thank you so much for your time. Any final plugs? Anything you want to say to close this out?
Well, if we're plugging things, listen, I am available on LinkedIn. My name is Mike LG. I'm the only Mike LG on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I am ML Gonzo on TikTok if your attention span is very, very short. Or I also run the Oakland Data YouTube channel. Again, you can search Oakland Data and see my big shiny face on all of our thumbnails. So those are the 3 plugs that we'll go with. It's been a genuine delight, Alex, to be on the podcast and do the presentation. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's been excellent. I've learned a lot, and it's always a pleasure to talk to someone who knows so much and has so much experience. So thank you very much. Have a good one, and see you on the next one, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you.